Do 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 do. Check one, check two. It's G from the Academy. Hey, wow, look, there's surfers out there catching the waves. I'm jealous. I'm jealous. Strange day. Strange day. It looks overcast and cloudy, but there's a warm wind, and it's not really that cold. The kind of wind that whips up the waves, creating these sort of 1 to 2 foot breakers that are really good for beginner surfers like me. Um, no, like me. Um, Interesting. Yeah, I just bought a surfboard. I think I said that. So I really ought to get out there and do that. But that's just procrastination as well, isn't it? Or is it the challenge of doing it? You know that they say like the least important thing about fishing is actually catching the fish to a certain extent. Right? The least important thing about golf is hitting the ball to a certain extent. Not that you shouldn't perform the activities well, it's just that there's so much more involved, right? I mean, golf is really good exercise for the older generation. Um, Fishing is a kind of personal meditation for a lot of people. And if you watch surfers, most of the time they're not actually catching a wave. I mean, catching the wave is like 1% of what they're doing when they're out there. They're swimming. Sometimes if they're in a group, they're chatting. Um, they're exploring. They're learning about their environment. They're getting exercise. Um, and just getting out there, right? Just getting your board and getting your wetsuit on and getting down to the sea, not knowing if it's going to be great because everything can change in 5 minutes, as happened to me out on the water. Um, was it just yesterday where the the sea was like glass. It was perfectly calm, and you were bobbing up and down ever so slightly, but it was really comfortable. And I was on one of those stand-up inflatable paddle boards where if you get the really big ones, they're very buoyant. And so I parked the board on the beach, went for a little walk, came back 5, 10 minutes later, and it wasn't flat. The sea wasn't flat anymore. There were these sort of 2 foot little breakers coming in, and it was a real struggle to get off the beach out to sea and back up the river. Um, but that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge. You have to respect nature. You have to respect your environment. And when you realize that things can change in a second, when you realize that a lot of these things, the general trends can be predicted, but the specific activities are something that's very different. Yeah, you can predict to a certain extent how the team is going to perform in the game, but you can't exactly predict the movements of the individual players. So that was me thinking earlier, is it the right time to go out there? Because those waves look good for beginners, and probably is. But I decided to do this little recording instead and hopefully bring some knowledge, some value, some information into your world. If you're following the work of the Academy online, every now and then, if you share something that you find useful, that would be cool. Because there's a lot of people sharing a lot of nonsense, a lot of rubbish, a lot of negativity, a lot of fluff. Oh, look, here's a picture of a famous actor with a meme around it. Um, or here's another picture of a spring flower, or this is my friend's dog, or You know, the great thing about the social media is that you can share what you love, you can share what you like, but you can also share what is helpful, relevant, progressive, that's going to help people make the right choices. Not that you should tell people what to think or what to believe, but you should always highlight the fact that there's not just one road. And we need this highlighted right now, considering the amount of ridiculousness that is this this focus on violent change, where things have to be stripped away from people, where property has to be removed from people, where um, where it has to be all done physically rather than verbally, right? Um, we've got to get back to understanding the need for communication, for conversation, for consultation. Where are all the professors in the universities and the institutions since these establishments have been on lockdown or shut down for a while? Where are they in helping society with their communication right now? There's nothing but radio silence from these people who are supposed to be experts at doing what it is that they're doing. Where's the YouTube videos from these people? You know, if you take, and you know, sometimes I just think that these people are protecting their work. Fair enough, but what is the point giving almost the same lecture every year when you could give it once, record it, and then send it out to everybody and move on to something else? Imagine continually reading the same book or the same chapter from the same book, and only that. You've got to move on. You've got to move forward. And this doesn't just mean onward without any thought, without any understanding, without any comprehension of the past. It doesn't mean any of those things. Yeah, it means onward with comprehension and understanding. Hi, Jazz. How's it going? Yeah, what's up? You sleepy? You still sleepy?
Because in the morning when you wake up, it's creative time and we
Mhm.
can create stuff in Minecraft.
Yeah, you're right. It is creative time in the morning when we wake up. We need to be creative in the early parts of the day and use those skills that we have to build. Absolutely right. Well, because you guys were all so good yesterday, and maybe I was thinking later on today if the weather's nice, we take a walk to the beach. What do you think? No, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to take a walk to the beach. Okay. Uh, well, you can say that Dad says you can have Minecraft for an hour. Yeah? How much is an hour? That's a great question. How long is a piece of string? No, an hour is 60 minutes. So um, I'm sure that if you know what I'll do, if you start now, then when I'm finished here, I'll come through and check on you. How about that?
Okay.
Is that cool?
Depends how well to put it on.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. There we go. There we go. Minecraft is the new Lego to a certain extent. You don't want to get completely trapped in that world. And I was thinking that I was reading the other day that Minecraft's going to come to virtual reality, and I'm a big fan of virtual reality because I think that if you can provide resources to people to help them construct and build things, and then virtual reality is a very cheap way. Once the technology has been created, it's a very cheap way of doing that. You don't need to transport huge pieces of equipment because you can construct them virtually to try to understand how they will work. And if you look at how engines are being built and how a lot of people are experimenting with new arts right now, it's very interesting. The sad thing is that it's difficult to explain to people outside of the virtual world what it's like inside of the virtual world, the types of experiences you can have. Um, it's a bit like, if someone's never played a sport before, it's a bit like trying to explain the sport to them. It's maybe not going to hit home. It's also the digital world is a way where if you think about it, there's much less prejudice going on. And what I mean by that is if you're playing a game online, then you want to play with another person whose skills you respect and who's good. And you don't care where they're from. You don't care if it's a boy or a girl. You don't care what age they are. Uh, you're just looking at how they perform within the game itself. And that's a great equalizer, right? Across the board. That's a great equalizer. So Jazz said last night, she said, I want to play some VR, Dad. So I set up a system for her, and I said, which game do you want to play? And I was thinking that she might want to dive into Rec Room and play some of those games. If you know the VR environment, Rec Room is sort of like a social area with hundreds of different games that people create for each other, and you can dive in and meet people and get involved in much craziness. You can't just leave your kids in there. You got to monitor them, of course, because you don't know who's going to be there, and most of the people are friendly and good, but it only takes one bad apple to spoil everything, right? So she said, I want to play the game where you float through space with a frisbee, and so there's this virtual online game. I think it's called Echo VR, and so she's on there, aged 5, with me monitoring that things are okay, playing games with adults. Now she's not as good as some of the adults, but they had fun, and I think that's part of what it's about. Because at this stage with that kind of technology, if it's not fun, it's not going to progress. It's not going to move forward. Um, which is one of those things about life as well. You've got to plan those fun elements into your life, into your work, into your day. Um, there's otherwise there's just grind, and grind can bring some level of success, but if you're not happy when you get there, what's the point, right? Maybe you need to set yourself a new challenge. Maybe for you the journey is the destination. It's true for a lot of people. So there we go. That was a tangent. Let's have a look at what's happening in the real world, because of course I don't live in the real world. I live on an island, right? I live on an island. It's true. So, and I'm stuck here. I'm stuck here unless I swim somewhere else. I'm stuck here because of the rules that are now in place. Well, talking about rules and control, as the Beatles said in All You Need Is Love, life's a game, but you can learn to play the rules. Yeah, life's a what?
Or 16. Is it 60 or 60?
Oh, it's 60 minutes, 1 hour. Yeah, and I'll come in 60. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, darling. I'll come and tell you when it's finished. Yeah. That is so cool that she came to check. Right. Which it could go either way, right? Like everything could go either way. It could be that she comes and checks because she has no fear and knows that asking a question is the right way to verify things. Or you could argue that she's coming and checking because she's scared to do the wrong thing. Right? Perspective. Perspective. Anyway, back to life, back to reality. Back to the 80s, decade of the best music in history. Um, Control. People don't realize that they're in a system of control. They don't realize that life is a game. There was even there was even that board game, the game of life, that did so much truth in that. Hey, play Monopoly, right? Tell me a lot of that stuff's not real. Yeah. You know, the best games are the games that bring in an element of fantasy, but underlying that is the fact you realize that there's a large amount of truth to to this whole system, to the whole system of the games that is set up. Makes me think of Star Trek, the original Star Trek series, where I think it was so popular because it treated everybody equally. Oh yes, but it was filmed in a time when look, it was a great place to begin this understanding that we had been able to solve all of these problems, giving hope, giving hope to people, right? But but real hope, not selling a false dream, because words are just words at the end of the day, right? Words are just words. You can't live without hope. Well, that's true. That's really true. But then if you look at presidential campaigns like Barack Obama's presidential campaign, hope and change. Huh? Hope and change. There's zero focus on policy and development and a lot of subtext in control, in complete control through arms of the government, such as education, right? Education. Trouble is, when everything becomes legislated, when everything becomes a common core, the same common core for everybody, when everything becomes standardized, right? When every child in the class is reading the same book instead of different books. It's system. It's systemizing people to become cogs, and it makes a difference later on in life because we see that in essence the C-19 scenario that we've had to live through is a live test. It's a what would happen if. Oh no, but it's real. Real people are dying. Like people die all the time from various diseases and various problems in large numbers. And sometimes not from diseases, sometimes from natural disasters, right? Sometimes just from living life, sometimes just from the side effects of drugs that they take to make themselves healthy. Sometimes from the side effects of whatever escapism you're searching for, right? We're controlled through fear, and the greatest fear we have very often is the fear of death. Fear of death. The only thing worse than a healthy fear of death is a fear of life. A lot of people afraid to live. A lot of people afraid to challenge themselves to make a difference, to influence. Because that's a responsibility, right? Nobody wants to take responsibility, so they abdicate from the positions of responsibility, leaving the pathway for the narcissists to filter their way into the democracy. Government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Really? Really? You don't even fucking know me. How can you represent me? You've never asked me. How can you represent me? Right? The insanity of it all. Oh, but society's always been that way, eh? It's easy to come up with the simple phrases so that you don't have to think about it, isn't it? Isn't it? It's easy to justify your own existence at the expense of others, right? Especially when your experience tells you just how right you actually are. Davos. Davos. You know what that is? A meeting in Switzerland of the real influencers, not your social media influencers. We're talking about the puppet masters. Obey your master. Oh yeah. The people that people fear to criticize. Yeah. Right. So the Davos World Economic Forum have outlines for what is going to happen next. How to use the crisis as opportunity. Oh yes. How to open the next door to allow the next wave of changes through. Especially now we're in a massive economic depression, as always artificially created. Thousands furloughed, thousands losing their jobs, thousands unemployed. I saw a video this morning of a line of people trying to file for unemployment in some state in the United States, and it was endless. It was endless. People have to stand in line for like 10 hours to file for unemployment. In a country that's supposed to encourage entrepreneurship, individualism, building your own business. But when you've got a fake economy, it's an economy that doesn't really produce anything to sell, so to speak, because that's the real free market. Not in, the real free market is you go to the bank, and I've got my own issues with banks as well, but had some of those today. Sideline, by the way, don't ever think that having a cashless society is going to be all peachy, right? It's not. It's not. Cash and cash flow is the glue that strings the fabric or the fabrics of society together. It allows us to stretch, which is vitally important. Imagine a switch. I mean, look, if you were evil, right? If you were completely evil, what you would do is you'd get everybody to switch from having cash in their pocket, knowing how much exactly they have. You'd get everybody off the local microtransactions that keep economies running. You get them onto a digital platform, and then you just switch it off one day. Either on purpose or by accident, you'd switch it off. You'd set off some electromagnetic pulse that fried the systems, as happens every 150 to 200 years from the sun. Yeah, the sun sends out these electromagnetic pulses and frequencies to the earth that can fry electric systems. I think the last one was in the middle of the 1800s at some point in time. And what are these people going to do then? What are you going to do when your credit card doesn't work to buy things online? You can't turn on your computer. You can't go to a cash machine. You can't go to a shop to pay. You can't just walk in and hand over cash and walk back out again. I mean, it's think about it. To hit the point home, I always mention the concept of the single mother. The single mother just using credit on her credit card. What's going to happen if she doesn't have access for some reason to that credit? She's not going to have. She's not going to be able to pay the bills. She's not going to have food. Straight back to the Dark Ages. Clever, huh? Straight back to the Dark Ages. It's interesting how all these improvements in technology, in all these experts working in all these institutions, haven't improved the economy in this country. They haven't improved the homelessness in this country. They haven't improved the fact that, though they've improved that they've increased the number of food banks, right, so that people with no food can grab food. But then look at the quality of food that's there. Have you seen that quality of food? Have you seen that diet? Crazy, huh? Crazy when we have all this technology to transfer positive information that is not actually used to bring more value to people, right? Well, what we need is more cartoons. Yep. Yep. Did you know that some of the biggest grossing films in the last 20 to 30 years, on a yearly basis in Western society have been cartoons? Once films were these great technical works of art with fantastic direction, and what films I like? I like those films where you go back and you realize that it's not special effects. Somebody set up a camera and the actors performed their theater, their art, and maybe there was a little bit of play acting and play fighting, and maybe there was a bit of movement of the camera and special or unique directions. That's the real cinema to me. That's the real attempt to capture the essence of being human, which is at the core and the root of art. I like that stuff. Modern films are just a lot of the time just effect fests, where the filmmakers have gamed things out and realized that if you don't have every 10 to 15 seconds something in some way happening, or some special movement of the camera, or something to keep the eye focused on the screen, that people don't watch anymore. And it's one of those, the downfall of cinema in the Western world and Hollywood is this self-fulfilling prophetic spiral of downwardness, if that's a word, where they want to be successful, but they know to be successful they have to pander to the deep psychological needs, but the more you pander to the deep psychological needs, the more you become addicted to them, right? There's little Stretch. There's little stretch. And now, who knows what? Now there's so much media is created, who knows what people are watching. Do you know what your kids are watching? Right? Hey, make sure when you log your kids onto some system that you've got access to the history of that, just for reference. I'm not saying total control and monitor everything, I'm just saying just for reference, right? To keep an eye. Keep an eye on your kids. Make sure that they're going to be your kids. Make sure they're brought up by you. Not brought up by the STATE, right? Not brought up by the system, underscored by the sustainable era, the sustainable agenda, right? You know, there's an element of sustainability that conflicts with human development. Sustainability is not growth. Sustainable, surviving, keeping things the same, right? Surviving, it's about survival. Keeping things the same. I don't want things to stay the same. Look, I like what I like, right? I like what I like. I don't want everything to stay the same. I want new adventures, new experiences. I want to go to new places. I want to see everybody up their game. Don't want to see anybody lose out. I know I did. Competition for the benefit of everybody. But we've got these new agendas. We've got the Davos-based systems. We've got the World Economic Forum. We've got the control of populations through governments borrowing money through IMF payback schemes that sometimes want 30-40% interest. Essentially, you're not poor because of your neighbor or your community. Right. Poverty is two things. It's a system and it's a mindset. It's a way of thinking. Maybe I don't have everything that I want, but maybe I do have everything that I need right now. Let me point out a vulgarity, right? Poor people are often obese. What does this mean? Well, you would think in a situation of absolute poverty, reference Holodomor, for example, or what happened during Mao's Red Brigade communist takeover and slaughter of society. You would think that what's the point? The point is about, lost my train of thought there for a sec. The point is about systems and mindset. right? Systems and mindset. You would think that, you'd think we'd be better off, right? You think we'd be further down the line than we are. Have you noticed that we've sort of just come full circle as society? What's improving, huh? You think about it, what's improving? It's a miracle we got this far. Got this far by putting trust and faith. Don't mistake that for hope and change, right? Trust but verify, right? You know, it's in faith. Real faith is not waiting for God to provide you with solutions, right? We're here to serve. Some people think we're here to take. The original pirate philosophies. Take everything and give nothing back. Of course, pirates weren't actually the real rebels. But that's another story. That's another story about history and fire and ice and gold. But let's go back. Let's take a step back to talking about the money and the changes, the radical changes that are going to be introduced. The silver linings of the pandemic, which show how quickly we can make radical changes to our lifestyles without any major problems except for the major problems, right? Almost instantly, this crisis has forced people. How can that be a benefit when it's forced? You can't force people to be good. You can't force people to be happy. Right? Just because you abandon something doesn't mean that that thing was bad. Right? It doesn't mean it was bad at all. Oh, look, we've abandoned using these businesses. That's not... Right. Oh, look, we've abandoned travel. This idea, this flipping of language, this thought that, well, it's non-essential, therefore we're not going to do it. Who's to say what is and what isn't essential? Who's to say? Who's to tell me what is and isn't essential in my life? How far are we going to let it go? Are you going to let people choose the books you read, the music you listen to? Yeah. The bed you sleep in? Will it end? Will it ever end? What's going to happen as a result of these worldwide problems? The market will be steered towards fairer outcomes, a fairer outcome. It's not fair. What's that? It's just, it's the flipping of a switch. It's an emotional response. It's not fair. That's what kids say, isn't it? It's not fair that you got to do it and I didn't. No, that's not the approach. The approach is, Well, I think it's really cool that this opportunity exists. Next time we do it, it's going to be my shot, right? And then making sure that people stick to that. We should be grateful that other people have opportunities. We should be grateful that other people spend money on whatever it is that they want to spend money on. You want to buy the $50 billion yacht? Then you go buy the $50 billion yacht. You want to build one? Then go build one. As long as the rising tide raises the ships built from real wealth created through hard work and real capitalism, not sponsored and supported capitalism, not the ridiculousness of angel investors and startup companies where you invest in us even though we haven't done anything yet, but we've got some good ideas. It's insanity, right? It's what it is. It's a play. It's a game. It's a trick. It's a trick. We're going to change it. Changes it was in wealth taxes. Look, most of the great things that were built in history. I'm talking about the great things, not the latter greatness. Talk about early greatness. Were built from communities that decided to build things within their own communities, right? The United States economy didn't begin to slow down until income tax was introduced. Didn't begin to slow down, right? Because, government is the dinosaur that's going to feed on everyone and everything until there's nothing left. Until there's nothing left, you understand? Until there's nothing left. That's why so many people have nothing left right now. It's because the dinosaur of government decided to feast on everyone and everything. Do you think the people at the south of this great island really have a vested interest and care in the people and what happens to the people in the north? Right? People have got enough troubles with their own troubles. Never mind other people's troubles or creating troubles. Right? Let's withdraw fossil fuels. Yes, let's. Yeah, even though the West is built upon that engine, right? We will have new rules governing intellectual property and trade and competition where the government will actually, to a certain extent, own everything. All property. Total control. Star Trek uniforms for everybody. Same haircuts for everybody. Just as we had the same education system for everybody. Yeah. Let's not forget centralized control doesn't work, won't work, can't work, and has never worked. Sorry. Across the board, universal income, national minimum wage. So you're saying we pay everybody the same no matter what efforts they put into what it is that they do. Not really very motivational, is it? Is that the best you can do? Is that the best you can come up with? Right. I'd never even considered the prospect. Hello. I'd never considered the prospect of entrepreneurship or starting a business or running a business or setting up a business. Through my entire school career, it never appeared once. It was never in one conversation with a teacher or tutor or member of guidance, ever. It never came up. We're always told to search for a job, find a job, look for a job. I think a lot of the solution comes in not searching but creating. Create a great life for yourself with your own hands so that you have some control over it. Be great and people will want to be with you. Where's the government encouraging that right now, huh? No, just sit and wait. Stay at home. It's the worst piece of advice I've ever heard in my life. Stay at home. What could be more pointless and useless? We need to create new economies, more resilient, more equitable, more sustainable, more green. Right. I wonder if we change the color, would that be more yellow, more blue, more red, more pink, more rainbows, more unicorns? We need everyone to improve their track records on environmental, social, and governance metrics. ESG. Oh, yeah. And let's not forget the fourth industrial revolution. The final priority of a great reset agenda is to harness the innovations of the fourth industrial revolution to support the public good. What does that mean? Especially by addressing health and social challenges by turning off access to healthcare, traditional access to healthcare, of course. Companies, universities, and others have joined forces to develop diagnostics, therapeutics, establish testing centers, create mechanisms for tracing, deliver telemedicine. Where's that? I haven't seen that anywhere. Concerted efforts are made in every sector, which includes gene editing biotechnology. Gene editing biotechnology. Talked about this before. Once your genetics are altered and your partner's genetics are altered, what happens to the future children's genetics, huh? Have you thought about that yet? Or are you just thinking about the next flu season? With the introduction of artificial intelligence, I'd rather have real people with real intelligence. I was in a bank this morning. I asked some questions, just some basic questions. It's amazing how people are thrown by simple questions. How little they're able to provide answers to simple questions. How seldom they're prepared for that. It's the little things that call everything to fall apart, right? It's the little things. It's just details. Yes. And the devil himself or herself hides in those details. But our world will be transformed. Everything will be transformed. Economic growth will be controlled. Agriculture will be controlled. Genetically modified. When the food you eat is genetically modified, you will be genetically modified also. We need sustainable cities, sustainable industrialization. Nothing will happen that is not planned and part of the great and grand agenda. Does it sound like a good place? Does it sound like a good place? Sustainable. What is sustainable? Sustainable is a code word for the reorganization of world wealth. Right. The reorganization of everything. Right. Is it going to lift up the third world? Has the West lifted up the third world? The only thing that's lifted up the third world is the prospect of having a free open market with government not limiting human innovation and interaction. And if you don't have interaction, you won't have innovation. Yes, sustainable is double speak. Sustainable is double speak. In 1992, Morris Strong stated, "Isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialized civilizations collapse?" You what now? Isn't it our responsibility to bring about that? You what now? Current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class are not sustainable. You what now? As Malcolm X quite rightly said, the media will have you hating those who actually want to help you and loving those who actually want to hurt you. If you're not careful, if you don't do the work, if you don't do the homework, if you don't do the hard work, if you don't realize what's going on, if you take a back seat and wait for it to happen, if you live an only reactive lifestyle, if you don't get out ahead of things, right? What an interesting world we live in. What a tangled web we weave. Look at that. I only got to one article. How ridiculous. How insane. And there's so much more to cover. So much more. We do what we can, where we are with what we have. And if we get it wrong, we pick up the pieces and we start again. My name is G. I represent the Academy. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope there was an ounce of sanity in what I said today for you. If you want to keep in touch, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, the Academy of Language Therapy and Life Coaching. Whole bunch of different things going on. Pick up one of my books. They're all free. Why not, right? Why not? What have you got to lose? Invest in yourself. Take care of the people around about you. And as always, don't forget to tell the ones you love that you love them. Speak to you soon. All the best.